So what do you think about self-love? Do you love yourself? I'm sure if you asked anybody that question, they'd say yes, right? Unless they're seriously depressed, I think most people just consciously would say, yes, I love myself. But perhaps there's varying degrees of loving ourselves. Perhaps like a relationship with a person, it's something that can be developed and grown over time. And how would you express self-love? Or how would you express love to another person? There's many ways you can do that. You can do an act of kindness, spend some time with them, say something nice about them, appreciate them. There's many things you can do to show that you love someone. You could buy a gift for them, financial contributions to their life, whatever. But then how often do you actually take the time to do something where you're like, okay, this is for you, this is actually to show that I love you, you being you. As I think self-love is really crucial, and it's something that I really believe it would help our species tremendously if we loved ourselves deeply, like truly deeply loved ourselves, and we actually spent the time to work on building this connection with ourselves. And there's different forms of love, you know, obviously there's narcissistic sort of loving myself and all of that, and maybe, you know, there could be a part of that, if as long as it's not too toxic and, you know, it doesn't take away from maybe perhaps healthy self-love based on actual true loving of ourselves, but also not hiding away from any of the imperfections we may have as a person, and not looking at perhaps our wounding or our blind spots or anything that actually might need a little bit of work on. If we don't just gloss over all of that, but we actually truly deeply love ourselves still, even with our imperfections, even with our flaws and stuff like that, then yeah, there could be room for great healing here. And how we treat our body on a day-to-day basis is a really good indicator on how much we love ourselves. I can relate from my own story. I used to be heavily addicted to various substances, and over the years I've knocked them off. And if I go back, I don't know, maybe 8 years, I was seriously addicted to multiple substances, abusing my body. And okay, I was having a lot of fun in some ways as well, but a lot of it as well I do think was breaking away, escaping from reality. It was too much. It wasn't like a healthy enjoyment of life. It was literally abusive, you know, like alcohol every day almost, weed, tobacco every day, and then on the weekend harder drugs, and that was a pattern for a long time, and caffeine in the morning. Now none of that's a part of my life. The only thing I think now is psychedelics, very rarely, and I feel so much better for it. It's been nearly 6 years since I've drunk alcohol, and I attribute this breaking away from my addictions to the more loving, or the more love I have for myself. And I like to share my experience with you, because I think there's I like to find a reason of why I've gone through some of these experiences, because as many as you can relate, I imagine, if any of you have been through addictions or have an addiction right now, it's tough, man, and it's hard, and you sort of, especially if you have a desire inside to quit, and you know you should quit, and you know it's doing you harm, but for some reason you just can't. There's this continual pattern that you know this thing hurts you, you know it's causing you trouble, but you still do it anyway. And it's so frustrating sometimes. And it's like, well, why do we have that inside of us? What is this hole that needs filling? And I think a huge part of it can come from loving yourself. Self-love. And it's not the only answer. There's also spiritual beliefs. A connection to God would help tremendously as well, because I do believe there's infinite love available to us should we be open to it, should we remove the blocks to it and allow it to flow in our life. And in a world where there's so much fear being put out there by our enemies, I like to call them our enemies, but of course if they're a human being, they're not separate from us in a way. We're a big family, but part of this family seems to have it out for another part, so that is by proxy put us in a kind of a state of where we have to fight back in a way. But one of the most powerful ways we can fight back, and I want to get this out there to all of the activists, all the people who like to take external action and be active in their communities and protest and hand out leaflets and all these awesome things. that is all fundamentally useless if we are not in here, we're not on point, we're not on center, we're not loving ourselves. Because when we do, we are so much more effective in our activism, in our day-to-day lives, in changing this world. It begins with ourselves, you know. Get your house in order before you sort out the street. You sort out the street and it might just sort out the nation, right? Or that beautiful, there's an even beautiful poem, I'll just recite it for you here if I can remember it properly. So when I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. Alas, the world would not change. And I become a little bit older, a little bit wiser. I started to change my country. Again, my country would not change, much to my frustration. It's getting even older now and even wiser, and having tried to change the world and change the country, I started to change my town, my local town. And again, even to more of my frustration, the world, my town would not change, just wouldn't listen. And then I'm getting to a very old man now, and I think, I know, at this point, I'll try and change my family. And again, I'm hit with frustration. Even at this old age, with all this wisdom, I'm still trying to change my family, and they're not listening to me. And then finally, on his deathbed, he realizes, aha, if only I had changed myself, perhaps by example, that would have changed my family would have changed my town would have changed my nation, and the nation would have changed the world. It's very empowering, and it shows that one person, you, the person watching this video, can make a difference in this world. And it starts with ourselves. Then we go forward from a higher state of consciousness and we can more effectively help the world. And if you have been following or gone into David Hawkins' work at all, it seems to be coming up a lot for me in my reality recently. He talks about all of the different levels of consciousness. Now, this is something I've come across his work a long time ago actually, but recently it keeps popping up, and I think there's a big reason for that. And he talks about how the higher levels of consciousness can actually bring up many people at the lower levels, and I resonate with that a lot. And I think one person can make such a difference in this world. They can be such a powerful, radiant, beaming lighthouse of light and joy and positivity that it can literally lift up other people. And it's not even just people that you're directly in touch with, it can be on levels we can't even see, which is really fascinating, quite metaphysical, but I really resonate with that. But then there's so much about even just our little daily interactions that we just don't see, and how powerful a bit of love given to someone else might just create this beautiful chain effect. You just don't know how powerful that is, and how we are all, what's it, like 7 degrees of separation or something like that, you know, by just the 7 people you know in your life, you're connected to the other rest of humanity or something like that. There's only 7 people in between each connection. It's really interesting concept. So you'll pass your love around and it will come back around and it will affect the entire human race. So I just wanted to do this one about self-love, and I hope you've gained a little something about it. And today, tomorrow, or this week, you set aside some time to yourself, commit to yourself, to love yourself, and build up that most important connection you have, and that's with yourself. I love you guys.